All right, we're rolling. Welcome to the GBNO show, the Get Better Not Older show, episode 12. Yours truly, Dr. Rob, and my awesome wife, Shannon. So as always, we're bringing a combined 50 years of experience, over 50 years of experience with me clinically seeing patients for almost 26 years now. And I'm the outside in guy, and Shannon has been seeing people for, I hate to say it, 30 years.
Almost 32.
Yeah. And she is the
inside out gal.
Yes, that's
so
why.
This is near and dear
yes.
to my clinical heart today.
Yes. Shannon has been saying to me for years, we want happy cells, right?
And any of my patients would tell you that I refer a lot to their happy cells. Like if they tell me, I did this, I did this, I did this, I said, oh my gosh, your cells are doing backflips right now.
Right. So this podcast is about autophagy and other cellular health mechanisms. Big, scary word, autophagy, but we'll get into it. We'll tell people what it is. It's really not that complicated a word once you understand what it means.
It actually sounds super boring.
Yeah, but it's actually pretty interesting.
Well, here is the bottom line. It encompasses everything that you and I do. It actually is the key to getting better, not older. And I'm talking at a foundational level.
Right.
Like this is as far back as you can go if you want to try to take care of your health. So if you want to give yourself the gift of health this season, if you focus on what we are presenting today, this truly is the best that you can do as far as living a lifestyle that's going to take living a lifestyle that's going to take care of your cellular health.
Right. And honestly, everything we talk about GBNO, Get Better Not Older, exercise, proper nutrition, sleep, it's all for the cells.
That's right.
Period. So the end.
We're going to give the backstory. We're going to give really why this isn't so important. We're talking about things like autophagy, cellular senescence. These can be overwhelming. So today our job is to simplify this for our listeners, to take it at a very basic level. So I am going to really challenge you today in that we have to stick to a script.
What are you trying to say? I ramble?
Maybe, but because otherwise this can get very confusing. So if anybody was watching us on YouTube, you might notice we are referring more to our papers this time, aren't we?
I'm going to try because I'll get in trouble if I don't.
Because it can get confusing, and we want to make sure that the takeaway is very clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Rock and roll, baby.
So
let's roll.
We're going to build this up. We're going to get to autophagy, but let's start with cells because they truly are where we begin.
Yes.
Dr. Rob, can you tell our listeners what cells are?
I can. Can I do it in a non-complicated way? Probably. I'm going to try my best.
Okay.
Picture a circle. Picture inside that circle is a little engine with a bunch of stuff in it that does many different things. There's a little engine in there that burns gasoline, technically not gasoline. There is other things in there, specifically something called a nucleus that is like the brain of the cell. There is DNA in there. There are little strands at the end of the DNA called telomeres. And in that cell is basically the main function of how we live throughout the entirety of our body.
Okay, so I'm actually going to read.
Okay, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Because this is important.
Okay.
Cells make up everything. Your skin has cells. Your muscles have cells. Your organs have cells. And there's different types of cells, which we're not going to go into because this is not a biology class. But basically, these cells have to be healthy. If they're not healthy, your body has ways of eating them up, if you will. And if they are healthy, it's going to project on the outside, how you look, how you feel, that sort of thing.
You're getting ahead.
And I'm just giving it, that's the foundation.
Okay, I'm going to read this.
You should stay on script this time around.
The fundamental building blocks of all living organisms.
Just said that.
Okay, think about that though. Fundamental building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when people say the term what comes first, the saying what comes first,
the chicken
or the egg, or what put the cart before the horse, or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is like where it begins.
Yeah.
Okay.
No cell, no chicken or egg.
That's right. And it's the only way we sustain life. Mm-hmm. Our cells have to be healthy to sustain life. And that includes growing and metabolism and reproduction. Like, it's responsible for very big things. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go through why is it that cells are essential for life? Okay. So first and foremost is that structure and support.
Yeah.
It's your tissues, your organs, the systems, your entire body structure is made of cells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So let's start at the basics. Your skeleton. Okay. That's my area. Your skeleton holds you up, and without proper cellular function of the skeleton, your system will fall down. As people age, specifically women, if their metabolic health is not good, they can get something called osteopenia, which is bone thinning. And then they can get something called osteoporosis, which is severe bone thinning, where you can get fractures. And that's a cellular mechanism. We have two types of cells in the bone. You have osteoblasts, which are bone makers. So think of a blast being an explosion of new bone cells. That's what gives you a fortified, nice, thick, stable bone. And then you have osteoclasts, which are basically like Pac-Men in the bone that eat up all the bone that is not functioning well, basically. So if you don't have that good cellular balance between osteoblasts and clasts, you're going to have bone degradation, osteopenia, osteoporosis, stress fractures, collapsing compression fractures, where you see those old people all bent over and you feel really bad for them because they're bent over and they got that huge hump. That's improper cellular health and the cellular structure of the bone.
And why did you say specific to women only? You said
because it happens. I mean, you will get osteopenia and porosis in men, but it happens more in women, specifically because of hormonal changes after menopause.
Okay.
But that's a whole different subject.
That is structure and support. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's clearly foundational. Mm-hmm. Then we have energy production. Yep. So this is near and dear to my heart because this is where we're converting nutrients, right, into energy for basically vital activity. Any vital activity, it's the nutrients feeding the cells so the cells can do what they need to do.
Right. Example, you eat a banana. The carbohydrates are broken down into sugars. Glucose, healthy sugars, goes into the cell. It's like gasoline to a car engine, and it burns it. There's your cellular energy.
All right.
I like to break it down for people like me who are not very bright.
Okay. So now this one's going to be near and dear to your heart, and that is growth and repair. Mm-hmm. So they grow, obviously, by dividing, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this because this definitely leads up to the beginning stages of our bigger topic, which is autophagy. But they create more cells and replace damaged and old cells. Mm-hmm. So like joints and things of that sort. You want to expand?
Well, okay, so the bone example I just gave, osteoblasts and clasts. Another one is for people who like to exercise, specifically weightlift. There's a difference between weightlifting and other cells because cells will divide and replicate. There's a theory in muscle growth called hyperplasia that has never been proven. I had a professor way back in the early 90s who was studying this, and there's some new research saying that it may happen, but it's not confirmed yet. But basically what happens, you exercise, you strain the muscle in a good way, you wake up sore the next day, or if you're like it's 2 days later. You have that kind of soreness. It's hard to straighten your arms or bend over. That's because you've done some damage to the cellular tissue of the muscle. And then basically what happens is the cells bring in proteins, and then the proteins make the cells stronger and fortify them and make them bigger, and that's your hypertrophy. But again, it is a cellular change, basically.
And joint repair. This is obviously very foundational to when the joints are not healthy, that cell growth and repair has to happen at the joint level.
And that's why we talk about collagen supplementation. We don't gnaw on the bones and eat the cartilage like we used to. We're not using the bones and the cartilage to make bone broth soup like my grandmother used to, that they used every part of the animal back in the old country. So that's why we always say supplement with collagen. I recommend Transparent Labs. Use code Dr. Rob. It'll save you 10%. Put it in your coffee every morning. Put it in your tea. It's flavorless, but that will give your collagen, which is in your joints, in your tendons, ample nutrition so they can repair and fortify, so your structure doesn't break down. Arthritis is not a inflammation problem only. It's a structure problem in the cells. You don't have enough collagen in those cells, so they break down. So there you go. Everything can be traced down to this mechanically.
Right. And so this is why this subject can get extremely in-depth and extremely boring. We are going to try to do more high level in making this applicable to our listeners. Like what can we do? First, we're just trying to educate you on why this is so important. We're giving you the backstory and then giving you what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's go on to, there's reproduction, obviously. That's how we produce offspring. I don't think we need to get into anything on that. And then
go back to your 7th or 8th grade health care, or no, what was we had it. What did we call it back in Canada? I forget. Was it just gym? Health. Was it health? No, it was something else. We always had like a gym day, and then we had a health class day, but there was another name for it, but I digress, whatever.
You do. And then we have adaptation and responses, meaning your body is always trying to create a level of homeostasis. And the cells have the ability to adapt and respond systematically. I don't know how else you would say that. Like just as a whole, it is constantly trying to adapt and respond to create that level of, how would you explain homeostasis?
I was going to say homeostasis.
State of well-being.
Well, it's not just well-being. Homeostasis is a big word that means normal inside your body.
Yeah.
Okay. Stasis meaning just a steady state. Homeo meaning we're homo sapiens. All right. It's us being at a normal state. So you put your thermostat at 72 and it stays at 72. Homeostasis is all these processes that happen in our body from a cellular level to other things, temperature and everything else. Cell regulation with regard to energy. Okay, that's all homeostasis. Just trying to keep it normal, because if you go up or down from normal, it's harder on your body to maintain, and then your body has to do adaptive things to try to bring you back. So the more you're at homeostasis, the more you're just coasting in neutral with less trauma to the system, if you will.
And your cells are working hard to ensure that we can adapt and respond to creating homeostasis.
Right.
Okay, so that's how important the cells are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is replication, because every single cell goes through a replication process. And that process, each cell replicates about an average of 50 times. That's healthy. They create offspring, and inside, just like we do, we pass on our DNA. The cells pass along the DNA to their offspring as well, and it's in the form of a telomere. The telomere is a way of encasing the DNA, and at the end of the DNA, there are caps, kind of like a shoelace.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy.
Because it could be frayed, but the telomeres kind of keep caps at the end of the DNA strand. As it replicates, that strand gets smaller and smaller.
So let me rewind. So your DNA, so you continue to be Shannon Jones and I continue to be Rob Jones. The DNA that is in your hair follicles, okay, in the cells of your hair follicles. When your hair grows out, the DNA is going to transfer to another cell to maintain your same hair color. When your skin does the same thing, your skin tone remains the same, because if it didn't, you'd be a chameleon and you'd be changing constantly. So the idea is it transfers its DNA to the next cell, so it's creating the next same thing for you, basically.
Correct. Now, here is where we start to get into the problems, is when these telomeres are transferred, each time they continue to that offspring, to that offspring, to that offspring, the strand of DNA gets shorter and shorter. The telomeres, I guess, get snipped off.
Put it into the lace terms.
So in other words, the code is getting shorter. Would you say the code that's being passed along is getting shorter? And there are various reasons that can exacerbate that. Good Lord. And that's where we start. There's either premature reasons that could happen or just aging. Like the more it replicates and the more that offspring replicates and replicates and replicates, is just only going to get down. Yeah,
so,
that's aging.
Again, take the shoelace, take the little plastic cap on the shoelace. The plastic cap on the shoelace is the telomere. And as we age normally, that will reduce a little bit and even fray a little bit. But the healthier you are, you can mitigate some of that fraying. The more unhealthy you are, you smoke. You use excessive amounts of seed oils, creating a lot of inflammation. You eat like crap. You are actually going to shorten that prematurely. That's why you see some people, specifically, I mean, if you got people who smoke a lot, you will typically look at them and they're going to look a little bit older than their actual age.
Yeah, so let's go through these one by one. So I'm going to read this just to make sure that it's clear. As a result of that offspring and replication, it becomes shorter with each cell division. As we age and it divides more time, that leads to shorter telomeres. So you can't do anything about that. That is just aging, right? However,
you can do something about it a little bit, but it takes a lot of effort.
Well, we could that's a whole nother podcast, but let's just talk as far as lifestyle and environment. That's where you're talking about the smoking and poor diet and lack of exercise. All of those things can exacerbate that being more shortened as the offspring passes it along.
Okay. Can I say something interesting about telomeres?
Sure.
Your telomeres adapt to your behavior as well. This is science from, 5, 8, 10 years ago. So you basically live in an environment where you're like me, you're cold all the time. You adapt to it and you are fine with the cold. And then like me, you move to a warmer environment and you no longer are exposed to that cold and you become a wimp like me and you no longer like the cold. There's some speculation that that's telomere change. So it's interesting. It can adapt based on the stressors placed upon it.
Makes sense, actually.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay, the other one is oxidative stress, because we have talked about oxidative stress, which is the precursor to every disease, right? So we've given the example of an apple.
Yeah, so for people who maybe are tuning in for the first time, go.
Oh, well, oxidative stress is the example that we give. It's really kind of the rusting of your cells, if you will. So if you take an apple and you cut an apple in half and it's exposed to the oxygen, it browns, which is basically oxidating that particular cell, and that's what's causing it to die, like basically turn brown. So oxidative stress is the precursor to all disease. And that shortening of the telomeres, that is a precursor to oxidative stress. So it's a big one. Like that's a big one. And then genetics, I mean, a variable involved in this could be that your genetics, you just were handed down typical, like our DNA strands that are just, they don't replicate, as well as they should, or that they become shorter and shorter and shorter, and there's nothing that can be done about that, clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is replication. That is telomeres. And then that is really the beginning of when these cells have a chance to be unhealthy. The biggest one in these two that we just listed that have the biggest chance of being changed is the lifestyle ones. So we're talking about how, at the very basic level, can we protect our cells and prevent these telomeres from being prematurely shorter and shorter than they need to be.
Yeah, so you've got to look at what you can control.
Yeah. So then we get into this subject of cellular senescence, which is really, honestly, it's definitely newer science. I would say, since 2015 is really when we started seeing not cellular senescence so much, but what to do about it. So basically what cellular senescence is once these cells have divided so many times and gotten shortened and shortened and shortened, the easiest way that I can explain this is that it's almost like they're resisting death, but they're so sick that they know they should not be replicating because they don't want to send something onto their offspring that's so sick. And then they just kind of hang out, and it's kind of where that term zombie cells come from. Yeah. So basically it's a cell that is kind of getting towards the end of its life, yet it's resistant to dying, which that's why it kind of coined the term zombie. Because if you think about that, it's not like he's not replicating and sending anything on, but he's also not quite dying like a zombie.
It's just kind of rotting away.
Right. So what's the significance of that? Well, these zombie cells actually are not great for our health. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the next thing we're going to talk about is how having these zombie cells can affect our health and then what we can do to try to catch it before it gets to a zombie cell. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about zombie cells first. So this cell, I'm gonna actually just read this. It's a stressed cell that are aged, worn out, yet lingering in our tissues. So that is just the life of that cell. That's one type of senescent cell. The other is kind of more on a mitochondrial dysfunction level. That is where the cell has been damaged prematurely. That would be more like lack of nutrition, toxicity, radiation. All of those are ways that cells could, it wasn't that it just aged out. It was actually prematurely damaged the cell.
Like environmental exposure or something like that. Right?
Exactly. So either that is creating that zombie cell or the life of the cell has timed out, let's just say. So then what is the significance of that? Well, zombie cells secrete these pro-inflammatory molecules that are kind of contributing. So it's like they are hanging out next to healthy cells and they're putting out really kind of negative little feelers that are prematurely affecting the cells next to them. That cell isn't even close to being finished, replicating, and it's still healthy, but because it's hanging out close to a zombie cell, it's causing issues for premature death of that cell. Mm-hmm. Let's say that. Okay.
So it's basically like the bad apple spoiling the bunch.
Yeah. And like things like that persistent, like age-related, that's where like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all of that. That's where that's why we really say, from a cellular level, that's why this is important, that we prevent these cells from getting to this zombie state, this senescent state, because that where they're just resisting dying off and they're hanging out, they're actually making other healthy cells become prematurely zombie cells as well.
It's like having toxic friends.
Exactly. So degeneration of tissues is one of those.
Yep.
So, that can disrupt the normal function. I'm going to read these. Weakened immune function. That's a big one. So then it says zombie cells release enzymes that break down nearby tissues, damaging cellular structures. For instance, in the skin, these enzymes can degrade collagen and elastin, leading to wrinkles. That ought to get everybody's attention, especially more than anything.
Especially our female audience.
Loss of firmness. And in organs, this breakdown can contribute to functional impairments and diseases such as Alzheimer's in the brain.
Pretty scary.
So this stuff is, even though we're talking it at a small level because it's a cell, you have to understand this makes up they're everywhere. Okay, Dr. Rob, let's take a break from the podcast and answer a couple questions from our listeners.
All right,
I'm going to start with you.
Okay, ready.
Hey, Dr. Rob, what do deadlifts work and why are they important?
Everything. Your turn. No, deadlifts work, honestly, they work almost everything. They work your grip. They work your foot muscles. They work your quads, hamstrings, glutes, your lower back. They work your traps. They're such an important foundational movement simply because even as we age, we still need to pick things up off the ground. So it helps maintain your knee mobility, your hip mobility, your ankle mobility, and your mobility to get up and down, picking stuff up and even up and down from a chair. So now, should you go out and right away load up a bar and do deadlifts? Probably not. You should probably look back at one of my videos on how to deadlift properly. Start with a kettlebell from a bench. Once you maintain good form with that, lower it down from the ground. Then you can try going a little bit heavier, but it's so important for everyday function that if you can do that right, you will prevent so much injury because the system is just working the way it's supposed to be working.
Okay.
All right, your turn. Hey, Shannon, the dietitian. What should I do if I don't really need to lose fat, but I do want to lose weight and drop a size or two?
Well, this probably has more to do with you. Basically, you will maintain your calories for weight maintenance. And if you want to change your body composition, which is what that person is talking about by dropping a couple sizes, that has more to do with what's going to happen in the gym. So it's less, if you're not wanting to increase fat and then it says not interested in losing fat. So you keep your calories consistent in more of a maintenance phase, and your changes in your body composition are going to happen in the gym by increasing muscle, maybe even walking on a treadmill at a incline, that type of thing. But going down to sizes, typically when you don't see changes on the scale, but people will say, well, I noticed I'm fitting into smaller sizes. That typically is exercise induced.
It's an odd question. Did this just come from the community?
I guess. I don't know.
Because it reads, I don't really want to lose fat, but I do want to lose weight and drop a size or two. So if you don't want to lose fat, you want to lose weight, then you're talking about losing muscle at that point. So if you want to drop a size or two in your dress size and you don't want to lose fat, you want to lose weight, you got to go pretty calorie restricted on that because you've got to digest some of your own muscle, which I don't know if I would ever recommend that.
No, I don't think that's... I read that more if they're just trying to change their body composition.
Okay, so that makes sense. So if you want to lose fat, or if you don't need to lose fat, but you want to change your body composition, you need to build more muscle. So you need to do a couple to 3 days a week of hypertrophy training where you're taking your muscles to near exhaustion through a full range of motion, and then you should probably be doing some HIIT training, basically, some high intensity interval training.
I think the takeaway is you keep your calories consistent, and most of the changes are coming in the gym.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. All right, back to the podcast.
And then finally, a higher risk of cancer, which is obviously a huge one. We are seeing more and more prevalence at a younger and younger age. So then
of cancer.
Yes. So then we get to, okay, well, that's a lot. That's a huge backstory on how we get to this point. So I hope we have done our job in presenting the importance of caring about your cellular health. Truly, it is all about prevention at this point. And that is really what the Get Better, Not Older, everything to do with what we are trying to do is disease prevention. And just keeping your cells healthy at a foundational level. So let's get into autophagy, because autophagy is a way to prevent the cell from delaying the zombie cell, if you will. So we're trying to insert autophagy so that we can catch the cell before it becomes a zombie cell. Autophagy, a natural cellular process where cells clean out damaged components, can help manage those senescent cells or zombie cells, but it doesn't directly clear them. However, it can indirectly reduce the impact of senescent cells by enhancing cellular health and preventing new cells from entering a senescent state. Here is how autophagy relates to zombie cells. So let's first even say, well, why do we even need to care about autophagy? Okay. So one, we already talked about it. It prevents that cell, cleans it up, like you said, Pac-Man, cleans up the debris, let's say, and helps that cell stop that process of getting sicker. The next thing is improving the immune function. You want to talk about that?
Improving immune function?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, we know if you intermittent fast, and it doesn't have to be a long period of time, you can go back and listen to our podcast on this, but even a simple 12-hour fast will help autophagy by doing one thing, which is super important. If you stop eating at about 7 or 8 o'clock at night and you give yourself 12 hours until the next morning, we know through research that the microbiome, which is the healthy bacteria in our gut, actually eats up the bad cells. You have these little bugs, I hate to say it, but these are little microscopic bacteria in your gut, in your intestines, that are actually eating up the cellular lining. And they ingest that, and that creates a better mucous membrane in the cellular lining of the intestine. And guess what? We know now, because the microbiome is eating that yucky stuff, that's their fuel. So that makes the microbiome healthier. And guess what? The microbiome helps regulate our immune function. So that's number one right there that we can control right away. If you are putting calories into your body after 7, 8 o'clock, you are interrupting and throwing a wrench in the process of what our body needs to do while we're resting. If you're digesting food throughout the night because you had a 9 o'clock snack, 10 o'clock snack, midnight snack, and that's digesting through the night, you're not turning over that mucous membrane, you're not feeding the microbiome, thus you're decreasing your immune function.
Correct. The other thing, remember when I told you those zombie cells were putting out the little signals? Autophagy can actually stop that. So it's an acronym, SASP, and I'm not going to get into exactly what that stands for because nobody cares. But the chemical that the zombie cells are putting out that's causing issue for the healthy cells, autophagy prevents that from happening.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah.
Okay. There are, senolytics, that is a class of compounds that are being researched and created to actually address a senescent cell and get rid of it, yet by not affecting a healthy cell.
Like a medication, you mean?
Yes. So it's made of plant.
That gnat is just freaking loving you, yeah.
So what they're finding is not only the lifestyle that we're going to talk about now, combined with these senolytics, can be really like the creme de la creme of taking care of your cellular health. Senolytics are very new. It's something that kind of started because of a study that was done at the Mayo Clinic in 2015, and then it was developed in like 2019, and now they are available for purchase. I'll let everybody Google that if they want to find the company that sells these senolytics.
So these are supplements. These are non-prescription
Correct.
type of over-the-counter supplements you can take to help with cellular health.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And so it's a combination. And the thing is, you've got to be really strict with the way you take them. Like it's like people take them like at the beginning of the month, and then they don't take them for 2 weeks or not again for the whole month, because it can have negative effects too. So again, there's a lot of new research behind this. So you can Google senolytics, but just know that we are advancing in this area. We are advancing in understanding, well, let's go way back. Let's not talk about getting on a drug to manage heart disease. Let's go back to the very beginning and what could we have done to create a situation in our body where we didn't even have disease to begin with. And that's really where lifestyle comes in, which is more you and I and our Get Better Not Older protocol.
Love it.
Okay, so this is how you can boost autophagy. You already mentioned some big ones, but basically we're just trying to keep these cells in tip-top shape, and these are some things that can help.
And guess what? What's number one?
Number one, well, there is no number one, but there is one that seems to float above. Actually, I listened to a podcast yesterday on exercise, and it's now that we know that exercise is not great for weight loss. I mean, I know that's going to surprise a lot of people. It's great for disease prevention, and exercise is the number one way that you can keep these cells the healthiest. Yeah. Do you want to explain why that is?
Well, I mean, I don't want to bore everybody with the microphysiology and biochemistry of it, but here's the bottom line. If you exercise, I mean, just the number one control, right? Diet and exercise. I mean, it's so easy to state. It doesn't even, we could have a podcast that we say, hi, I'm Dr. Rob. This is my awesome wife, Shannon. Welcome to the GBNO show. Exercise every day. Eat well. Have a nice day, everybody. You know what I mean? Like it really just comes down to diet and exercise. But yeah, aerobic exercise that is challenging the system is the best way to manage your system, because you're forcing hyperoxygenation. You're forcing your heart to work harder, to pump more oxygen through the system. The oxygen is going to bind to the hemoglobin. It's going to drive it into your cells, and your cells are going to be like, sweet, more energy. I can do more stuff with what I need to do in the cell versus, gasping for breath because you're overweight or you don't exercise and you're barely oxygenating when you're breathing and your body's just barely hanging on. And I mean, it's like revving the engine and warming it up. You're basically making everything fine-tuned with exercise is what you're doing. And
like just the immune health of the cell improves. And why is that important? Well, because then that you're going to be able to fight off pathogens and other stuff that are threatening that said cells. So it keeps those cells firing on all cylinders in a positive way. Yeah. There isn't really a negative. I mean, I guess there can be a negative level of too much high intensity. Of course.
If you have too much high intensity exercise, I mean, at its extreme. So you see this, unfortunately, in some CrossFit gyms where you can get something called rhabdomyolysis, where when you over exercise, your body freaks out and you actually get cellular death, and it's bad for your kidneys. You'll actually have muscle death, and people from rhabdomyolysis will end up with this weird swelling and this like jelly in their arms that doesn't go away sometimes. So like anything, like in its extreme form, it's too much. But again, if you find a sweet spot of exercise where you're out walking and you're breathing a little bit heavier, but you can maintain a conversation. That's zone 2. It's important for your basic homeostatic function. But you need to get up into zone 3 and zone 4, which is, huffing and puffing, but a little bit of interval of rest and then going again. So playing tennis is a perfect example. Climbing stairs is a perfect example. Playing hockey is a perfect example. But you have to maintain that level of exercise in all those. I just got the net, I think. Oh, that would have been awesome. You've got to maintain those levels of exercise at all those levels because that's the efficiency. So your body can work. This is the analogy that just popped into my head. Picture a car that's been sitting in the garage for years and years and years, and you finally are going to start it up. Or if you have a lawnmower and it's winter time and you're just starting up that lawnmower in the spring to do your first mowing, and you pull that ripcord or you turn the engine over and that puff of smoke comes out of the exhaust because you've got all that fuel that's been sitting there and it's not been burning efficiently. Okay. You're burning some oil with that and you're getting that black puff of smoke. That's not effective. That's not efficient. It's not exactly how it works in our cells, but you want to have that nice, clean burning engine where every time you start it up, boom, it's ready to go. The oxygen comes in and burns. The ketone or the glucose molecule comes in and burns, and it burns out efficiently.
Right.
That's what oxygen does, or that's what exercise does.
And I mean, let's just drill this down to what really matters to everybody. If you want to look better, because I'll tell you what happens to your skin when cells oxidize, that's where wrinkles, etc., come from. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are spending a lot of money on gels and serums, and I mean, I just can't even imagine the amount of money that is poured into this right now.
It's crazy.
When if people would just live a healthier lifestyle, they wouldn't need any of that stuff.
How about Botox injections and fillers and all that?
It's a whole industry that has just taken off. So let's go back to some of the other things, and this goes, our foundational things, sleep. Everybody always says, well, where do I start? Let's start at sleep. Mm-hmm. Because again, while you are sleeping, your body is working to help your cells get rid of the yuck and start the next day fresh. Yep. And so if you're not sleeping, you are missing out on the cells are missing out on that ability to clean out the guck. Yeah. And get the fuel injector cleaner in there, right?
And you're even, honestly, if you're not sleeping well, even after a heavy bout of exercise, I don't want to say you're negating the exercise, but you're sure as heck not gleaning the benefit of maximizing that exercise benefit.
Okay.
Tons of studies showing that athletes who are the fittest people on the planet, they have sometimes 40 to 50% reductions in performance and huge increases in injury risk if they don't sleep properly. So remember, that's not exactly about our subject of autophagy, but again, as we get older, specifically in our age range, over 40, over 50, sleep is so important because these mechanisms have to occur while we're sleeping, because if they're not, you're using everything during the day. You're using those mechanisms. They can't clean up while you're using them.
I think sometimes people get overwhelmed with, where do I start? This on TikTok is saying this. This is saying this. This is saying this. This is really what matters here, is taking care of your cells. If you want to know what you should do, this is what you should do. Yeah. This 100% would be worth spending time on doing these lifestyle factors that are going to affect your health at a cellular level.
Okay, so let's go through a list.
Well, fasting, which we actually did an entire podcast on recently.
Right.
So as you said, and I even said, I recommend a minimum of 12 hours because that gives your system a chance to refresh, if you will.
Can I say something really quick? And people are going to go, 12 hours, that's forever. Not really. If you sleep 7 to 8 hours, you've just knocked out 80% of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. So, stop eating at 7 p.m. Don't eat again till 7 a.m. That is not asking a lot.
Yeah. So it's really only like 3-4 hours awake time that you're not eating. And if you feel a little hunger pang, just drink some water. That'll fill up your stomach, and guess what? That hunger pang will go away.
And we've also talked about balancing meals properly at the meal time so that you stay full.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's just a list of some other things that are known to promote autophagy. We're not going to get into the mechanisms of why, but caffeine, curcumin, berberine are two big ones. Green tea, ketogenic diets, and then hot and cold exposure.
Yep.
And that's hot and cold exposure is getting a lot of airtime right now as far as promoting autophagy.
Yeah.
And this is why, because that particular therapy is something that they have seen reductions in improvement in cellular health.
Yeah, so it's because of something. It's a term that I learned way back in university, and I don't know, back in the 1800s. I think it was 93 or something. It was called eustress, eustress. Eustress is a good type of stress. So when you take a cold plunge, it's pretty uncomfortable. I don't do it personally because I just hate being cold, but cold plunging has been proven to increase eustress, which again creates something called cold shock proteins, which promote autophagy. Same thing with sitting in a sauna. Same thing with that what's that sleeping bag you have at home again?
Yeah, it's an infrared. It's a sauna blanket,
basically. It's a sweat box. It's just
a way of releasing toxins so that those toxins don't affect your cells.
Okay, but also when you're heating up the system like that, you're getting heat shock proteins, which again is a eustress. It's a good stress, so it's triggering autophagy. So again, there's your boring geek way of explaining, the good of cold exposure, the good of heat exposure.
So we did a huge backstory here, and only because I really wanted to prove to everyone that it is worth them caring about their cellular health. And that hopefully when they hear more about autophagy and more about cellular senescence or zombie cells, hopefully everybody is a little more on board with knowing what that is and how applicable it is to their health. We've mentioned some really important things. The biggest takeaway is lifestyle and everything to do with our GBNO lifestyle protocol has to do with improving cellular health, for sure.
And again, it's from the inside. I mean, with regard to this, it's from the inside out. If you are starting to see your skin wrinkling, if you're starting to feel like your joints are breaking down, maybe it's time to take a look at your cellular health. It's not just about, I'm getting old and I should expect to be wrinkled, and I'm getting old and I should expect to break down. I don't buy it.
No.
I don't buy it.
And we know, this is truly like the most foundational prevention. And people will say, okay, so when should I start this? Well, so let's say the sooner you start in your 30s, because at that point your cells are fairly young then, the sooner you start that lifestyle, think about that.
Yeah.
It's compounds over time.
But it is never too late, because we know there is potential for telomere adaptation. Okay, so we know that you can actually affect your DNA with positive behavior, positive, healthy behavior. So it's never too late. If you're listening to this and you're 65 and you just retired, get after it. Follow the GBNO protocol so you can age well and age better, and of course get better, not older. So there's a good segue.
So I'm not exactly sure when this podcast will come out, but here's what I think of as we put a nice little bow on this today is if you are wanting to start thinking about New Year's resolutions and you want to give yourself the gift of health, cellular health is where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully this is helping everybody get on board with the importance of it, and everything to do with what we do in the Get Better Not Older community, as well as on this podcast in our protocols, are all about cellular health.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this or watching this and go, well, hold on, you didn't give me a comprehensive list of what to do. Well, every post I make about physical health, every post you make about cellular health internally, our programs, it's all about this. So all you got to do is look back, and there's a ton of resources there. So I think that wraps it up. So for episode 12, I'm Dr. Rob. I'm helping you get better from the outside in.
And I'm Shannon, and I'm helping you get better from the inside out.
So until next time, get better, not older.